with designing and building a new fire station.
A former Facebook employee warns of the platform's dangers facing teenagers. I'm Skyler Henry on Capitol Hill with more from the Senate hearing and the tech giant's reaction.
Also, Russia launches an actress and director to the International Space Station to film scenes for a feature-length movie.
The 4 states' most watched news starts now.
Authorities say a Southwest Missouri toddler is in the hospital after shooting himself with a gun. This is KOAM News at noon. I'm Tanya Bach. Topping our first 7 minutes, Duquesne, Missouri Police Chief Jonathan White says the 2-year-old is alive. It happened Monday night at a residence on the 1200 block of South Duquesne Road. We will have more information and hear from Chief White on the KOAM News at 5. Missouri Governor Mike Parson denies clemency to a death row inmate despite calls from across the world. Pope Francis joined the chorus of people calling on Governor Parson to grant clemency to Ernest Johnson for killing 3 people during a 1994 convenience store robbery. Johnson is scheduled to die by injection at 6 p.m. tonight at the state prison in Bonne Terre. The 61-year-old's attorney, Jeremy Weiss, has said executing Johnson would violate the U.S. Constitution. It prohibits executing intellectually disabled people. Joplin Council members approve an ordinance for architectural design services to build the city a new fire station. The new station will be on a 2-acre land in the area of 30th Street and Jaguar Road. Paragon Architecture LLC out of Springfield will handle the services, which will cost more than $290,000.
Provides a lot of flexibility and needed coverage in an area that's growing with a lot of valuable property. Being near the industrial park, it's positioned well for future growth and expansion, and so it'll be a great addition and really improve the safety services for our community.
Councilmember Phil Stinnett voted against the ordinance. He says one reason why is that he believed a local company could have done it. The council last night also approved a $2 million ordinance to replace the Joplin Creek interceptor. Well, another chilly morning that's looking to turn into a beautiful 4-state afternoon. Michael Hayslip joins us with a first look at the forecast.
Yeah, forgive me. I'm paying attention to you. I'm waiting. I'm reading about spider ballooning, which evidently we have going on our wires in the tower outside the station. And so I'm kind of immersed in this. And I'm going to have to ask our engineer, Cale, who alerted me to all this, as we take this is our tower cam. Look at the bottom left-hand corner right there. I wonder if that's not the result of one of those.
So is spider ballooning when like baby spiders take flight?
That's exactly what it is.
Okay.
And
I mean, obviously they don't fly, they use their
You and I have been here long
web.
enough that I'm sure that it's probably, I know it's happened once since you and I have been here. I just maybe don't know if I've ever paid attention to it before.
Have you ever watched Charlotte's Web?
Yeah, that's been a long time. And I always cry at the end. So I kind of stopped watching it.
Well,
I know what's going to happen at the end of this movie. I'm just going to cry. So
the babies all balloon away.
All right, so here's where we are temperature-wise. We'll get to the ballooning. I'll try to get some pictures. If I don't get them today, we'll get them. See if we can't get them on the morning news tomorrow. It's already 78 in Neodesha, Tanya. Compare that to 70 in Monette and Cassville. And of course, Monette and Cassville actually never slipped into the 40s earlier this morning. So it got a whole lot warmer out to the west, certainly than it did to the east. 72 running through Joplin, Miami, and in Pittsburgh. We've been talking about a slight chance for rain today. We see a little green there in the Springfield area. Hasn't gotten into our counties. And as the clouds intrude there from the northeast, that's kind of what we'll keep our eyes on. But it's going to be very, very sporadic and not amount to anything. It's a 7-day forecast that is going to give us some little bit more widespread rain on Wednesday. And then we'll talk about our impending October heat wave. Coming up here in just a little bit, Tanya, we'll put Future Track in motion. I'm going to go look at some spider ballooning. I had to double check back over and make sure that I knew what it was called. And we'll talk about how close we get to a record, perhaps, by the time we see that 88 and 90 pop up.
Oh, I do not want to see a record if it has to deal with heat.
Hashtag Record Watch 2021.
No more
It's been a while.
No more records dealing with hot weather. No.
What if we were
not
talking
right
about cold weather?
I'd take it.
Okay.
At this point, I'm ready for a cool down. All right, thanks, Michael. Facebook is apologizing for the mass outage that left billions of users unable to access Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp for several hours yesterday. Now, the company blames a technical issue. Well, a former Facebook employee has come forward to claim the social media giant knowingly allows the spread of harmful misinformation and that its products damage the mental health of young users. Skylar Henry has more details from Capitol Hill.
Whistleblower Frances Haugen appeared before Congress to say Facebook knew about the harm its products were causing, but placed profits ahead of safety.
I'm here today because I believe Facebook's products harm children, stoke division, and weaken our democracy.
Haugen, who worked as a product manager on the civic misinformation team for 2 years, told lawmakers Facebook ignored its own evidence that Instagram was creating body image problems for teens.
Engagement-based ranking on Instagram can lead children from very innocuous topics like healthy recipes to anorexia promoting content over a very short period of time.
Haugen says Facebook research also shows its product is used to undermine democracy, pointing out the misinformation that led to the January 6th Capitol assault and the COVID vaccine skepticism.
The dangers of engagement-based ranking are that Facebook knows that content that elicits an extreme reaction from you is more likely to get a click, a comment, or reshare.
Lawmakers are looking at ways the government can better regulate Facebook and other social media sites, something that appears to have bipartisan support.
If they won't act, and if big tech won't act, Congress has to intervene.
I've been arguing for some time that it is time for Congress to act.
Facebook says it wants Congress to provide more regulation.
We do think that regulation is important so that there is somebody outside of us validating our work.
The company also told CBS News, "We continue to make significant improvements to tackle the spread of misinformation and harmful content." Skylar Henry, CBS News, Capitol Hill.
Now, Hagen argues that properly regulating Facebook is impossible as long as its algorithms remain private from anyone outside the company. That's a look at today's top stories and weather in our first 7 minutes. Up next on KOAM News at noon, Russia is looking for another space first, making the first movie in space. And later, we're making an Italian cream cake in the Mr. Food Test kitchen. Captain Kirk is really going to space nearly 250 years before the time of the original Star Trek. Now, we learned yesterday that William Shatner, now 90 years old, will travel on the next Blue Origin spaceflight due to liftoff 1 week from today. That's pretty cool. Well, this morning, a Russian rocket carried another actor into orbit. As Elizabeth Palmer reports, she's ready to turn the International Space Station into a movie set.
If all goes well, this launch will make movie history. Aboard that rocket, after a summer of training, are actor Yulia Peresild, director and cameraman Klim Shipenko, and cosmonaut Anton Shklyaplerov. They docked at the space station on Tuesday so they can begin their mission to shoot a movie about a surgeon, played by Peresild, who flies into orbit to save an astronaut's life.
Well, it's a stunt.
Professor Ian Christie, a Russian movie expert, says the project is at least partly political. It's no coincidence that massive publicity around the movie comes just as the Kremlin's struggling with a lethal COVID surge and President Putin's popularity is sagging.
Undoubtedly, it is propaganda.
But the state's paying for the whole thing.
Yeah.
In Hollywood, space is classic blockbuster material.
Good to go.
And it was a Hollywood rumor about Tom Cruise planning a movie in space with Elon Musk that fired up the Russians. Of course, the competitive element is there, says the movie's director. Tom Cruise also really wants to do this. Russia has had big wins in the space race with America. The first dog in orbit, the first man and woman, and now the first movie.
It sort of speaks to something that has this deep roots in Russian culture, a belief that, yes, man should reach the stars.
But then he and she must return to Earth. They've already practiced the landing to face the next critical challenge at the box office. Elizabeth Palmer, CBS News, London.
Pretty cool. Still to come on the KOAM News at Noon, Mr. Food.
Have you ever paid someone with dessert? I have, and it was welcomed with open arms. Stick around for the story and the sweetest can be recipe.
But first, Michael Hayslip returns with your complete forecast.
All right, so credit goes to our engineer, Cale Garner, who was telling me about this concept called spider ballooning. And you have to forgive me. I'm sure a lot of you at home are sitting right now going, duh, Michael. Yeah, this happens every year. The amazing thing is right now, and I turned the tower camera there to try to get a shot of it. You would almost think out our back door, the guy wires that you see crisscrossing the tower right there, you would almost think that we put up Halloween decorations is what it looked like. It's the spiders that, as little spiderlings, Cale's right here in the studio with me. Cale, correct me if I'm right here, or wrong. Spiderlings, they climb as high as they can. They shoot the webs, and sometimes they just let the wind take them, sometimes taking them hundreds of miles if they get caught in the jet stream. The other thing that I've noticed, Tanya, there's a whole lot more birds out there that were spider ballooning today. I feel like we should have a little Elton John Circle of Life in the background. When I walked outside, and I'm like, that's a whole lot of birds than what we normally have. But yeah, they're, you know, for them, a little mid-afternoon snack, I guess. Had some cloud cover that's developed over 7th and Rangeline. It's been a delightful late morning, early afternoon, though. 72 degrees is where we stand with our humidity dropping down to 66%. As high as 78 in Neodesha, still barely hanging on to the 70s in Monette and Cassville. And then we've got a whole bunch of 72s, just about no matter where you look right there through the central portion, Nevada, Pittsburgh, Joplin, and Miami, all chiming in at the 72 with a clear Skywatch storm tracker. We developed a little light cloud cover, but we've been void of any rain. You can almost tell where the low pressure is. Starts there just to the east, to the northeast of our counties, stretches all the way up to the Great Lakes. And speaking of the Great Lakes, that is exactly where that northerly jet stream comes off of, sweeps down here, grabs the moisture off the Gulf, and is giving the deep south a nice bout of thunderstorm activity along with monsoonal action still going on in Arizona. The big difference between now and last week is the Gulf moisture and where it's being pushed. You remember we talk about that precipitable water. Imagine standing at a 5-gallon bucket, goes straight over your head. That's how much water is in that column above you. You get to the purple and you get to the darker blue, and you're very, very dry. And that's pretty much where we are, as opposed to last week, where we were seeing colors reminiscent of what they're having right now in Mississippi, Alabama, and then portions of Georgia. And so when we throw up the severe thunderstorm risk map, you'll notice everything stays off to the east of us. Speaking of the east, let's talk about the Atlantic Basin really fast. While it's not a named storm, this is a system that we're watching because it's beginning to cluster up a little bit. It's not tightly formed, it's rather disorganized for the time being. But also, too, it's going to take a northwesterly track and eventually head toward the mid-Atlantic by the time we get to the weekend. We're already seeing some high 70s. Not going to be surprised if we don't throw an 81, 82 in for the western part of southeast Kansas. And as the cloud cover continues to develop, like over we saw 7th and Rangeline, keeps us out of the 40s overnight into early tomorrow. So as we get into Wednesday, this is where our chances for rain kind of expand. The counterclockwise motion kicking some scattered precipitation all the way to the western portion, and it just kind of spins right there. Certainly nothing severe nor anything to write home about. And then we got a warm up on our hands, 78, 88, 90, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So Tanya, let's talk a little record keeping really fast. 88 and 90? Beginning of October? We gonna get close? No, actually we're not. On Thursday, our high predicted of 88, we'd have to get to 93 degrees that dates back to 1963. We'd have to have a repeat performance. Saturday's high is also 63 that dates to 1979. Psychologically, does that help? No record breakers.
All right, we'll take it.
No record breakers.
I didn't want to break one anyway, as you know. All right, thanks, Michael. We take this time to honor today's four-state hero, Lieutenant Colonel Bradley Byler in the U.S. Army. The Webb City native joined the Chemical Decontamination Platoon with the 1st Infantry Division, 2nd Brigade. He served tours in both Kuwait and in Saudi Arabia. Byler earned the Bronze Star Medal for Valor. To Lieutenant Colonel Bradley Byler, we thank you, our four-state hero. Today's recipe is good as gold. It may start with a box cake mix, but it ends with layer upon layer of a to die for from scratch taste that'll make you feel like a star baker. Howard shows us how to make his bakery style Italian cream cake in the Mr. Food Test Kitchen.
I have a neighbor who's a plumber, and a while back he helped me fix a leaky faucet. When I asked him what I owed him, he said, "Don't worry, just make me a dessert sometime and we'll call it even, since you know how much I love sweets." So after thinking about what to make, this easy Italian-inspired layer cake came to mind. To make it, we start by beating a box of white cake mix with some eggs, buttermilk, and oil. After that's mixed, we stir in a good amount of coconut and chopped pecans. And rather than making this just 2 layers, we made it into 3 so that each layer is nice and delicate. While they bake and cool, we mix together some store-bought cream cheese frosting with more chopped pecans. At this point, it's time to drizzle some rum over each layer before frosting it. After all 3 layers have been stacked, all that's left to do is frost the sides and top. Maybe garnish it with a few pecans. What you end up with is a simple but elegant cake that's just as welcome after some homemade manicotti as it is with a tall glass of milk. To get the recipe for our Italian cream cake, all you have to do is check out our website. Let me tell you, my neighbor loved his cake so much that every time I see him, he hints for me to make him another. I'm Howard with Kelly in the Mr. Food Test Kitchen, where today we found a sweeter way for you to say, "Ooh, it's so good."
Gotta love a good Italian cream cake. You can find this recipe along with a lot more good food from the Mr. Food Test Kitchen online. Just go to our website at KOAMnewsnow.com. Here's a look at our 4 state market prices.